there is no one-size-fits-all solution to address our global challenges or even local challenges matter, that every single country, every city, every community is different and people are different. And so you need to be able to curate solutions that take into account these unique needs and wants of the community.
Through her work with climate justice, Kehkashan Basu is embracing the differences between generations and communities and amplifying the power of common ground to find better solutions for all. As founder and president of Green Hope Foundation, Kehkashan advocates and empowers those in marginalized communities that are often forgotten about before, during, and after climate crises. Thank you for joining Lynn Foley, host of Remarkable Women, Powerful Stories, as we hear from Kehkashan about her journey.
I'm Canadian, but I was born and raised in Dubai, and growing up in two cities that are so very global and so very interconnected, but with very different forms of biodiversity present, very different physical environments. That was something that always fascinated me. And I feel like I kind of had the best of all of these different sorts of environments available to me, whether that was the desert climate or whether that was the freezing climates of Toronto. So that was always very interesting to me. And I grew up in a family where taking care of people and planet was the norm. My parents would go out every evening to distribute food and clothes to underserved communities, and I would accompany them. My grandmother had this beautiful terrace garden where she grew her own vegetables. And so I always understood that there was this connection that we had to have with the people around us and the planet around us. And I'm like that kind of that mindset. I thought that everyone had that. I thought it was a very nice world that we all lived in. But that all changed when at the age of 7, I saw the image of a dead bird with its stomach full of plastic. That was like really disturbing for me because it was a wake-up call that there were humans around the world that would allow something like this to happen. And clearly they did not share our of taking care of each other and the planet. And as a 7-year-old, my first thought was, how can I do something to stop this from happening again? And so as a very curious child, I decided that, okay, I'm going to do my research. How do I do that? I remember I'd attended a lecture by environmentalist Robert Swan, and his words, the greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. That was like, okay, this is definitely something that I need to do. And so given the fact that I'm born on World Environment Day, 5th June, that was something that I always knew, and it was celebrated. I was like, oh, that's so nice that I have this connection to Mother Earth. Then it kind of in my head, I was like, this is going to be my life's mission. I know that this is why I've been put on planet Earth, because this taking care of people and planet is my life's mission. And to mark the start of my journey to fulfill this mission, I planted my first tree on my 8th birthday. And so that is how I came to love biodiversity, love our planet and all of its denizens. And that's kind of how I started my work. And all of that was influenced by what I saw with my family and growing up in all of these different environments.
So as you were about to enter your teenage years, your childhood dream led to the creation of a foundation, and your work was noticed by the UN. So can you explore with me the path you've taken, including your study choice and that strong global voice you have now for influencing around climate justice? So from my perspective, it's a really interesting early recognition of your work.
Yeah, so I still remember when I got the email inviting me to speak at the United Nations. I was 11, and it was to speak about the work that I've been doing for the past years, like when I started at the age of 8, whether that was, going around to beauty salons, restaurants, encouraging them to use less water, not use hazardous chemicals, recycle their waste, or educating my peers and adults alike about the importance of taking care of our planet, how environmental degradation affects people. So that was what they asked me to speak about. And so that was my first step into the international arena. And then the following year in 2012, when I was invited to speak at Rio Plus 20, the largest and sustainable development conference of the time, with seeing 50,000 delegates there with only 5 people under the age of 18, made me realize that there was a severe lack of inclusivity in the sustainability process. And whether that was not just young people, but like women and girls, underserved communities, literally any like people, there's like a really big population of people who were not benefiting from the status quo, from the process. So that's why I founded Green Hope Foundation, to provide a platform of learning that turns into ground level action to create a more sustainable world. And now we work in 28 countries with over 500,000 people. And so I started my career very, very young. And I always went forward with the belief that age has nothing to do with capability. And so I was like, this is what I know I'm going to do throughout my life. And of course, since I started my organization at 12, I was also in school at the same time. And as someone who was super competitive, always wanted to, push myself to be the best version I could be. And that included like getting the top grades in my class. So that was really important for me at the same time. So I had to very early on learn robust time management skills so that I was able to balance having a full-time career with doing really, really well in school, getting excellent grades, and getting into an excellent university. And so I was able to do that by, I slept less. I worked 10 times harder than my peers, but I was able to do it. And then I thought that, it was really a no-brainer studying in like my undergraduate degree is in environmental studies, a Bachelor of Arts in Environmental Studies at the University of Toronto. And that was a no-brainer because I knew that there's always so much more to learn, but also I could bring in my practical experience to my studies.
Yes.
My academic studies. And so if anyone ever questioned me that, oh, okay, so where is your knowledge to back this up? Like, I'll be like, okay, do you want my practical knowledge? Do you want my theoretical knowledge? Like, I have both. So and even then it was really important for me to do really well in my studies. So I graduated from University of Toronto with high distinction, which was the highest honor that was and so that was really great. And then I thought that, since I'm working with so many different stakeholders already with Green Hope Foundation, whether that's nonprofits, governments, local authorities, the United Nations, and private sector, I had experience kind of working with and within all these or entities. The one entity that I was still kind of working externally was the private sector, and the private sector plays such an important role in the sustainable development process and achieving climate justice. And I thought that it's really important for me to have an internal perspective so that I'm never caught unawares when, Green Hope Foundation is working several institutions, and that is that's why I decided to do my MBA. So last year I graduated with my MBA from Cornell University, and so now I have the theoretical knowledge on all of these different aspects, and of course I have my practical knowledge, and I continue to use all of that to be able to facilitate the ground level actions that Green Hope Foundation undertakes.
So really what you've done throughout that period of time by doing a study and your work with Green Hope in parallel is built your credibility and the respect in the field, which of course has played out from age 11 when you already had that respect, but growing respect given the sorts of places that you're asked to speak these days. How has the global travel you were able to do as a young person in family and now, how does that influence or move for you with the study, with Green Hope Foundation and what you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, that played and still plays a very important role. I was very fortunate that my parents, every year, sometimes multiple times a year, we'd go to a new country or new region and it wasn't just like, just seeing the typical tourist attractions and then going away. It was spending time there, immersing ourselves in the culture, and just kind of understanding how different areas, different cities, different groups of people. And I feel like that was possible, and we were open to that because, like I grew up in two cities that are very, very multicultural and very global in their thinking, and like actually really global as well with the number of people who live there from all around the world. And I feel like that has definitely shaped the way that I work and the Green Hope Foundation works because uh, we understand that there is no one size fits all solution to address our global challenges or even local challenges matter, that every single country, every city, every community is different and people are different. And so you need to be able to curate solutions that take into account these unique needs and wants of the community. So even if there's a really localized solution, like the different people are going to view it differently and are going to benefit from it sometimes in different ways as well. And I feel like traveling around the world, learning from so many different cultures helped me to realize that at a very early age. And so that is why, like, I always try to ensure that any kind of solution that we implement, it's like we share best practices, we learn from others, but we always make sure that we're able to kind of go really, really deep and meet those unique needs and wants. So, and that's definitely influenced by, immersing myself in so many different cultures from such a young.
Lovely. So, along the path you are already taking, you're influencing global leaders to involve young people to truly listen to their opinions and ideas. And of course, I hear it's about creating peace and climate justice. Can you share more then about the work of Green Hope Foundation and how the opportunities you have to speak? Because when one looks at your LinkedIn profile, you can see very clearly that you have opportunities to speak at many, many different forums, etc. How's that making a difference, do you think?
Yeah, well, when I'm invited to speak, it is entirely based on the work that I do. That's always something that's backed me up because obviously as a young woman, I mean now young woman, like starting back then a child, people were like, oh, what is she gonna bring to the table? Like, what are you doing? But then I showed them my work, and it's like, here you go. This is what I have done, and then that's the work speaks for itself. So I didn't have to do anything else to be like, oh, take me seriously. It was like, here's my work. Do what you will. And that was what I used to be able to show the world that young people and children definitely have the power to change the world. And so because we work in so many different countries and so many different contexts, and within the umbrella of sustainability, of course, we see that there's different challenges, and to address those different challenges, there need to be different solutions and very specific solutions. So, for instance, we harness clean energy technology for social good. So, utilizing solar power we have our solar powered Academy of Hope for women and girls in rural Bangladesh. So that provides climate resilience to girls in the mornings and functions as a sewing school for women in the evenings. We have built solar powered water farms that act as distillation systems to purify groundwater and rainwater. And so this is in Kiribati, which is a small island developing state, as well as in rural Cambodia. So in two countries with two very different impacts of climate change, one with rising sea levels and brackish water, one with just the rivers around it being polluted, but both working to provide clean drinking water to the communities. We utilize solar energy to build solar-powered streetlights in Cambodia, in Liberia, in Bangladesh, to make sure that communities that are suffering from climate change-induced disasters, they have safe spaces. The women and girls specifically have safe spaces to go out at night. Creating that, ensuring they have psychological safety. The girls feel safe going to school at dawn, because with the climate disasters, like immediate drop in learning and going to school. We have our solar-powered mobile libraries that take books to the doorstep of thousands of out-of-school children, specifically girls in countries across Asia and Africa. And this was the time when we implemented this. It was when COVID hit, and it was COVID hitting at the same time as a lot of induced disasters hit. So it was like, oh my gosh, there's this complete gap that we were trying to bridge in terms of learning. We have planted over 1.2 million indigenous trees across the world, a lot of them being fruit trees, to help communities from rural Peru to Suriname to India work to restore their land within communities suffering from climate change. We've also planted over 100,000 mangroves all across the world. So whether that's in Kiribati or in the UAE or Suriname, Bahamas, Barbados, so all around the world to restore our very important mangrove ecosystems and protect our biodiversity. So our work is, and that's like literally just a tiny, tiny snippet of the work that we do, because I go on and on and on. But to like highlight that our solutions always take into account not just the environment, but the people who are dependent on that environment, and also the economy, so that they're able to have a stable source of income. So like the sewing school that I mentioned earlier, so the women there who are part of that are able to support their families with the income that there. If you look at our social media pages, like most recently, we've expanded the work that we're doing with tiger widows in the Sundarbans, which is the world's largest mangrove forest. India side, so empowering women who've lost their husbands to tiger attacks through like fish farming, poultry farming, duck farming. So anything to make sure that they have a stable source of income to support themselves and their families, and combining that with mangrove restoration to help protect their local environment. So yeah, that is a tiny snippet of the work that we do at Green to create this better world.
Yes. So it feels to me the right time to ask the question about funding, because not-for-profit organizations across the world and foundations, I hear from the people I interview, the struggle to attract funding to underpin that work. So I'm wondering if this is discussed in the forums where you're involved, and what do you see the solutions that are needed to change this, so that this work that you've just given us the top level of can proceed?
Yeah. I mean, that is the biggest logistical challenge that we face. And and it there's this huge funding gap when it's it's young people already. We're like, okay, there's the severe funding gap. It gets worse when it's young women and young women of color. So you kind of go dive deeper into who's running the organizations, who's doing the work, and you see that, okay, yeah, there's this huge gap that exists. And so, I've been speaking out about this ever since I started my work, because I realized very quickly that there are a lot of commitments that are made that aren't met, because you're committing billions of dollars to to protect the planet, or to restore mangroves, or to empower communities, but the money is not reaching the grassroots organizations like us who are actually working there. So there needs to be a real drastic recalibration of our global financial system. I have definitely spoken out about it at the conferences I've spoken at, whether that's at the United Nations, and always, I remember a lot of my speeches at the UN and have been stating the fact that $1 if invested smartly goes a long way in bringing about positive change. And that is our mantra at Green Hope Foundation. And if we are able to do this work, like the scale of our work is so large with the amount of funding that we get, like just think about how much more we could do if we actually had access to the funding that was being, committed at all of these conferences. So yeah, it's something I've spoken out about. It's the gap is still there, and yeah, I keep hoping that as my generation enters the workforce and gets into positions of power, that we coming in with this awareness, we are able to change certain things, working with like-minded folks from previous generations. But yeah, no, the system really does need to change. When I'll continue speaking out about that, because yeah, you need to have access to resources to be able to continue to work. So yeah, we'll continue with our work with, we still all of this with the meager amount of funds that we have. But yeah, at the same time, I'll continue to advocate for ensuring that we have equitable access to funding.
And so some of that appears to me, the potential for blockages, lots of money, as you say, is committed, particularly from the corporate world and maybe governments, but corporate world, but it's not finding its way directly, as you say, to organisations that, $50,000 or $100,000 or $200,000, whatever currency, would make a huge difference. And there's something happening between where that commitment's made and the understanding of where it needs to go. So I hear that, and I'm hearing that a lot in the in just the work I do in this podcast. So I think that's a plea for corporate and government world to think differently, isn't it, about how the money gets there, because we have an issue with climate. So therefore, what are your thoughts and reflections on the disproportionate effect climate change has on women, and what more needs to be done to make improvements? Because you are working hard on those inequities. You've just explained some of them. But what else has to happen? Because it feels to many of us like that's not understood. So Zonta International is picking that up with, some of the programs that we're working on and some of the advocacy that's occurring through Zonta International and clubs around, Zonta says now to climate change, and how do we make that happen? But I'm wondering what your views are about that disproportionate effect.
Yeah, well, women and girls are disproportionately affected by climate change. I think that's very well known at this point. We think it is, like, people know it, but it's still, I don't think it's kind of gone into people's heads really, because the actions aren't like, they aren't telling us that, oh yeah, people know about this. And it's definitely, and as a grassroots actor, we see every day that how it's an inequity multiplier, amplifier. Every single kind of inequity that previously existed in communities, that, whether that was lack of access to education or lack of access to toilets, lack of access to clean drinking water, lack of sexual and reproductive health and rights, like all of that is exacerbated when climate change induced disasters hit. So we've built toilets in several climate vulnerable communities, because, and specifically for women and girls, because like their needs are just at the bottom of the list of priorities. Women and girls, like we work in communities where menstrual hygiene is a huge taboo, and as sexual and reproductive health and rights. And when climate disasters hit, and we are working with really young women and girls, like their health is not thought about at all. There are no supplies, there's no knowledge, they are ostracized, and so their vulnerability levels just increase exponentially, and of course they're not going to school at that point. So it's like this vicious cycle that we need to break. And when we're thinking about climate solutions, and so what needs to change is that every solution has to, like, when anyone's kind of putting forward a solution or creating a solution, we need to think with a feminist lens. That's what we work on at Green Hope Foundation, feminist climate justice. So when we are working to, our climate solutions in such communities, and we think with that feminist lens, and so that's where we're able to say that, okay, when we were talking about climate education, it's not just about, oh, there's climate change happening and that's it. It's about ensuring that we provide sexual and reproductive health and rights education to women and girls, and what to do in the face of a climate disaster. Where do you access resources? How do you take care of your health? Like, that's part of that education of surviving and thriving in a climate vulnerable zone. So I think that is something that needs to change. Even though we keep saying that climate change affects women and girls disproportionately, it's still not set in stone in terms of the actions that are being undertaken. So there's still people still think that, oh yeah, working on climate change, it's just data points, it's just reducing emissions. And that is important, but you need to take into account how these disasters have been affecting women and girls for centuries. And also the knowledge of how to rebuild is often, it's centered around women and girls. Like, women and girls are the ones who are taking charge of the rebuilding, the knowledge of food, the knowledge of water, the knowledge of home. Like, that is, and particularly in rural communities, that is the women's domain. And that is not taken into account when these it's like the patriarchy plays a very big role in that. So yeah, it's just kind of ensuring that a conscious effort to make sure that we involve women and girls in the decision-making processes, and that we use a feminist lens to implement all these solutions.
It seems to me that this inequity around climate change hasn't yet got the same spotlight on it that violence, domestic and family violence has. That whole piece of gender equality and the issues with domestic and family violence, climate change, and the effect on women and girls around climate change hasn't quite been elevated to that space. And it is through the work that you do, other young people are doing, particularly young women. And I wonder then how you, in this space, deal with the climate change non-believers, because you've been talking a little bit around that intergenerational solidarity. So how is it that generation of women and young people in your age group, mine, and the age groups in between, how do they all work together and involve men and women and everyone to get there? So how do you deal with that prevailing non-belief?
Yeah, I mean, I realized very early on that there are always going to be naysayers. There are going to be people who are resistant to change, who just don't want to come out of their comfort zone to act. It's like a lot of the messaging, particularly in in the West, is that oh, you have to sacrifice all the comforts of your life if you want to mitigate climate change. And people are like, no, we're not going to do that. And I think that some people are definitely like, okay, it's something we need to work on, but a lot of people are going to be like, no, we don't want to do that. And so even if all of the evidence is in front of them, they're just not changing until and unless it hits them and affects them personally. So there's the apathy is there. Like, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, it's happening in another part of the world. Like, we've dealt with people like that. I've personally spoken with so many people throughout my career who are just, well, it's not affecting me. So, why should I care? Yeah, it's not only that they don't want to come out of their comfort zone, it's that it's not affecting them, so they don't care. But now we are seeing that climate change is impacting not just countries that the West deemed global South, but in these so-called global North countries as well. And so they're like, oh my gosh, it's here, but it's been here for such a long time. It didn't affect certain communities before. So yeah, I think that building empathy is what we do through our work. We try to ensure that people are aware that it's their fellow human beings that are being affected, we try to create an emotional connection to some aspect of their life that they're then able to understand that it's an issue that needs to be addressed. And we try to ensure that through all of our education programs all around the world, whether it's in here in Toronto or whether it's in Kolkata or whether it's in Paramaribo, it's like working to ensure that children grow up with the empathy that no matter where they are able to think and act for a sustainable future, even if they're not being impacted by the impacts of like themselves. And yeah, I think that slowly and steadily we are changing mindsets. If people have to wait to be affected to change, some people are like that. Some people who've been taught their entire life that oh, it's something that someone else needs to do, or it's not affecting me, why should I do it? But then when they're confronted with the evidence and they're seeing that there's so much destruction going on, they're like, okay, no, I think I need to change. So we were able to kind of bring them over onto our side. And yeah, I think those, in that way, we deal with the non-believers. And honestly, their mindsets have never stopped me or my team from doing our work. We just continue doing. And yeah, we hope that we're not going to waste our time trying to change someone who doesn't want to change. And at this point, if like they aren't able, like, okay, there are a lot of other people who are committed, and we are creating the change. So yeah, that's something that we focus on. And in terms of intergenerational solidarity, there are good and bad people in every generation. I feel like the younger generations, we often demonize the older generations a lot, and I don't adhere to that mindset at all, because I've definitely seen young people who are so apathetic towards people, towards the planet. It's honestly scary how robotic they are. And I've seen people who are like 94 who have been working since their youth to to campaign for disarmament, campaign for equal rights. And this is typically we see more in the feminist space, where women like of all ages have worked to create a better world for all, but definitely in the climate and environmental space as well. And so I always feel that there's opportunity for learning and growth at every stage, no matter how old you are, what your gender, what your race is. It's like just coming together to create a better world. And that's why we focus so much on intergenerational solidarity, because there are people who've had experiences that we won't ever have, because we didn't live in that time, but then they're able to bring that in, and we bring in a different perspective, and then we put that together to create positive change.
So with that in mind, as we record this podcast, preparations are underway through UN Women for the Commission on the Status of Women, CSW 69, which includes Beijing plus 30, so 30 years since the Beijing agreements. So speaking of intergenerational solidarity, I was in New York last year for that. That is a prime example, I think, of intergenerational solidarity. I believe you'll have some involvement this year there.
Yes, so Green Hope Foundation is an action coalition leader of the Feminist Action for Climate Justice of UN Women. So that's part of their Generation Equality Forum. And they're like, we are a youth-run organization, but we're working with organizations that are led by women of all ages and from all around the world. And so again, it's a very like intergenerational effort to highlight the need for feminist climate justice. And so yeah, like we'll be there at CSW this year, understanding the importance of Beijing. And obviously, like I wasn't born when the Beijing conference took place. Neither were none of my team members were born either, but we understand the importance of taking this forward and taking the message of women who were there, who were like our age when Beijing took place. It's really wonderful to be able to work in that sense and bring in all of these perspectives to push for feminist climate justice, and not just at the UN, but continuing our ground level work at the same time. So yeah, my hope for this CSW, I think, is as with any conference, I feel like there's a lot of focus on commitments. There needs to be more focus on commitments into action, because that's where the real work happens. And so I feel like that's something that, as feminists within this space, that's something we always go in with. And yeah, this time is no different. Green Hope Foundation and I continue our work on the ground. But yeah, just with going in with the hope that we're able to turn those commitments into ground level action.
Yeah. It's the talk turning to action, and it's the same in everything to do with, women's rights or human rights and the whole gender. Wherever we explore gender, it is that talk to action. So as we need to wrap this up, the time's gone so fast today. What do you think are your greatest leadership gifts? Top 2 or 3 leadership gifts you have?
I would say empathy, honesty, and being open-minded. I feel like one, with empathy, I've worked with a lot of apathetic people around the world, and I could not, even as a 7-year-old, wondering how people could be so apathetic when, I showed the picture of the dead bird to a lot of other people, and people were like, well, some are like, oh, okay, but it's like that happens. But I don't want this to just be like, oh yeah, that happens, and then moving forward. I want it to be like, have reactions like, we need to do something. I remember that happened when I told my parents about it, when I told my grandmom about it, it was like, okay, yeah, we totally support you, that you want to do something because it's the right thing to do. And that's what we teach the children that we work with, that being kind and compassionate and empathetic is a strength. You need to use that to care for your friends, your family, your community, and for the planet. And it's a good thing, and it will help you be a good human being. So I feel like that is really important. As a leader, you need to be able to be empathetic. And even if you haven't faced something yourself, understanding that there is something that you can do to create that positive change. Honesty, I feel like it's very, very important as a leader to be honest about where your strengths and weaknesses lie, and being transparent in that sense, so that people are aware that, it's not, oh, you're just this separate person and we're the ones who are kind of doing the work. It's never that. It's that, here are my strengths. Here's where I would appreciate your strengths. And we as human beings in this space can work together. And just yeah, that honestly definitely helps. And being open-minded, I feel like there are so many things that we don't. And if we think for even a minute that, oh, I've finished growing, like it's all done, like you stagnate. So I feel like that's really important as a leader, to be open-minded at all times. And I think all of these 3 qualities have definitely helped be a better leader for Green Hope Foundation. And I would add probably just well, 2 more: listening to others, going with open-minded, listening to others, being open to listening to everyone and getting their viewpoints. And I would definitely say hard work as well, because it's not easy to do the work that we do. And it's important that having that commitment and going forward with it, I think that's really, really important as a leader, not just saying that, oh, someone else will do it.
Yes.
If I want someone else to do something, I need to be able to work hard and do it as well.
So to me, it feels like your final message to us is, don't be apathetic, stand up and really get involved and do something about the things we care about. Would that be a fair summary of it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Step out of your comfort zones and act. Like that's like the best way to go forward. I know that it can be daunting, but it's the challenges that we face, they're not insurmountable. We can create change, but you need to be able to be willing to go out there and make a difference.
What an amazing conversation we've had today. I can't wait to see what happens next in your world, where you take this, where you and all of the younger people, as you say, no one in your group was born when Beijing 30 happened 30 years ago. So I can't wait to see what happens. So I wish you, and Centre International wishes you all the best. And thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you so much for having me.